This Shabbat, we return to the story of our patriarch, Jacob, Yaakov. The most complicated figure in the Torah, Yaakov is driven by the need to realize his foreordained destiny. As a young man, he swindles his older brother's birthright and blessing. According to prophecy, both are meant for him, but that neither justifies the pain he causes his brother, nor mitigates the alienation he suffers himself when Esau vows to kill him and Yaakov flees for his life. Only after a 20-year exile does Yaakov return home to face his past. That journey sets the scene for this mysterious encounter. Yaakov was left alone, and a man wrestled with him, and he saw that he did not prevail against him, and he wrenched Yaakov's hip, and he said, "Let me go." And he said, "I will not." And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Yaakov." And he said, "Your name shall no longer be Yaakov, but Yisrael." And he blessed him there. As he departed Emanu-El, he was limping on his hip. Only this much seems certain. A man wrestles with Yaakov through the night. Yaakov refuses to release his opponent without a blessing, and the blessing he receives is a new name, Yisrael. But the narrative reads with such ambiguity, we wonder who the attacker is and who is attacked. We might imagine them both so covered with the dust, the avak in which they tumble, we cannot discern who is on top and who's on the bottom. Yaakov's story reminds us we wrestle in the real world, not an ideal one. That we face certain decisions where rights and wrongs are unclear, and others where even the best choice leaves us limping. Fleeing Esau 20 years earlier, Yaakov had glimpsed an unearthly vision, a ladder with angels dancing upon it. Now he wrestles in earthly entanglement, and earthly entanglements are rarely black and white. He receives the new name Yisrael because, the Bible explains, he has wrestled with the divine and the human. From the very beginning, to be Israel has meant to struggle to apply Judaism's ethical ideals to complex human encounters. Once the dust cleared over October 7th's atrocities, Israel's leaders confronted the painful but familiar moral dilemmas. Israel has wrestled before with the challenge of fighting Hamas while attempting to free those held captive. Israel has fought before in the densely populated Gaza Strip, where civilian casualties are guaranteed by Hamas's rocket launching from schools and headquartering beneath hospitals. Israel has endured before biased charges of disproportionality and asymmetry, critics claiming the IDF is killing too many Palestinians given the number of dead Israelis, and firing weapons far more lethal than Hamas's crude rockets. Proportionality in war does not compare the number of dead on both sides, a statistic Hamas assures will always impugn Israel. Proportionality measures the value of a military objective against the harm done in achieving it, a moral assessment the IDF makes with care. And if asymmetry in war contrasts firepower, it also differentiates the ethics of its employ. Hamas targets Israeli civilians while shielding itself with innocent Palestinians and Israeli hostages. Its fighters often dressing as civilians, so even the innocent look like combatants. The IDF takes great pains to avoid innocent Palestinian casualties at risk to its own soldiers, who, because of those precautions, have perished in the dangerous Gaza streets and Hamas tunnels. Thank God 110 of the hostages are now free. We are only beginning to learn of the physical and psychological torture they suffered, and the 140 remaining still endure. But even their release presented Israel with a moral quandary. Nadav Peretz, who survived the attack on Kibbutz Nahal Oz, where Hamas murdered 14 and kidnapped 7, explained, "We want two things, to see Hamas destroyed and to free the hostages. And right now the latter outweighs the former. That's the trade-off. The hostages are our most painful spot," added Yaki Sagi of Kibbutz Be'eri, where Hamas murdered 100 and kidnapped 50. "You want them back, so you end up becoming a pawn in the hands of Hamas." Hamas knows the value Israel places on rescuing every captive and leverages it. To bring home Corporal Gilad Shalit in 2011, Israel exchanged 1,100 prisoners, mass murderers among them, including Yahya Sinwar, the architect of the October 7th attacks. In the last week, Israel released 210 more, 2 for every 1 hostage freed. The pause in fighting, which Hamas violated with a deadly shooting in Jerusalem yesterday and rocket fire from Gaza this morning, also worked to their benefit. Every moment of quiet enabled them to regroup, resupply, and prepare for their next assault. And now international pressure again rests on Israel to minimize harm to the innocents the terrorists deliberately place in harm's way. The world must understand Israel's military leaders operate from a tactical disadvantage because morality in conflict matters to them. Every decision Israel makes will yield painful consequences, just what Hamas wants. But unlike Hamas, Israel will wrestle with those consequences as it fights to bring its people home and remove the threat on its border. Even the victor in this war, and that will be Israel, will walk away limping.